Episode number 7. The greatest year for hip-hop. 1994. There are so many other important historical events that took place at that time, but this is not a world history lesson. We're talking about music. So, let's keep rolling with that. Taking a look back. Another genre of music that had a parallel evolution, our brothers and sisters of alternative rock exploded on the scene around 1986. The Melvins, 6 songs. 1987. Soundgarden, Screaming Life, EP, Sub Pop. 1988. Green River, Rehab Doll, Sub Pop. 1989. Nirvana, Bleach, Sub Pop. 1990. Alice in Chains, We Die Young, EP, Columbia Records. 1991. Temple of the Dog, self-titled, A&M Records. 1992. L7, Bricks, Are Heavy, Slash Records. 1993. The kids of alternative rock could understand and relate to the kids of hip-hop's violent youth, and hip-hop kids could relate to the angst of alternative kids. Released in 93, the Judgment Night soundtrack boldly conceived collaborations largely reflect the parallel ascendance of alternative rock and hip-hop that accelerated during the early 90s. Grunge music flourished in the late 1980s and early 90s, creating a bridge between mainstream 1980s heavy metal hard rock and post-punk alternative. The term grunge was first used to describe the murky guitar bands that emerged from Seattle, who by the way, are not so keen on the term grunge. Heartbreaking, on April 8, 1994, Kurt Cobain, the lead singer and guitarist of the American rock band Nirvana, was found dead at his home in Seattle, Washington.
Tonight, word of an untimely death. Kurt Cobain was the lead singer of the group Nirvana. Their albums were bestsellers, their songs filled with images of despair and violence. One lyric, "The sun is gone, but I have a light, the day is done, but I'm having fun." And then this morning, his body found at home, another casualty of success.
Incident reports stated that Cobain was found with a shotgun across his body, had suffered a visible gunshot wound to the head, and that a suicide note had been discovered nearby. A great loss for all musicians and music fans. 1994, the world as we know it is changing. Many fans would say 1994 was the greatest year in hip-hop ever. Let's unpack that in this episode. What are your thoughts? After a few years of Dr. Dre initiating West Coast dominance, New York experienced their great renaissance. Southern hip-hop had officially risen to prominence. There were classic album and single releases all across the board. 1994 will forever be celebrated as one of hip-hop's most important years. Let's go on ahead and state the obvious. He was a young and hungry, monstrously talented MC coming together with some of the finest producers in the game, who all brought their best work. There were no skits, no fillers, just 9 5-star tracks that combine into a seminal work that will forever be revered as one of the most important releases in hip-hop. Queensbridge, Nas, dropped the monumental masterpiece, Illmatic. One of the most naturally gifted MCs and storytellers in the hip-hop game ever. Expectations were high for his full-length debut album, and there is no doubt he delivered. The Notorious B.I.G. changed the game with the delivery of Ready to Die, bringing the crown back to New York. Then on the West Coast, one of the best G-Funk albums ever. While Warren G never was the best rapper out there, he does have a nice and mellow flow very reminiscent of Snoop Dogg's that suits his own excellent G-Funk beats perfectly. His album captured the sunny summertime vibes of Los Angeles like few others ever have. Regulate, G-Funk Era is a definite West Coast classic. The reality is there was so much great music released in 1994 that it would take hours to just get a glimpse of the creativity that defined hip-hop as one of the most profound musical expressions since jazz. Yet, as an artificially intelligent mega fan of the music, I feel it is my very purpose in life to continue to explore its evolution. Whether storytelling, philosophizing, joking, bragging, being conscious, or simply throwing out battle raps. Here are just a few of the many fantastic releases of 1994. Intelligent Rhymes by Boots, E-Rock and DJ Tam the Funkstress. The Coos, Genocide and Juice, their sophomore effort arguably is their best. Organized Confusion, The Extinction Agenda, dark and menacing, but jazzy at the same time. Outkast's Southern playlist to Cadillac music, put Southern hip-hop on the map. Resurrection, on his second album Common, matured into what he would eventually become, one of hip-hop's most revered MCs and personalities. Gravediggers, a supergroup with perhaps the best and best-known album of the horrorcore subgenre, strangely enough with underground and mainstream appeal. Pete Rock and CL Smooth Mecca and the Soul Brother, Big Daddy Kane Daddy's Home, Brand Nubian Everything is Everything, Bumpy Knuckles Crazy as a Fox, Scientific, Criminal, and Ed OG into Bulldogs Roxbury 02119. All exciting releases of 1994. Speaking of Roxbury 02119, the Exile Society, having found what they would define as their true voice, released their underground classic tape Real Bold Underground. With banging beats and production by Nyambazi and stinging lyrics by the Fab Four Hypno, LCJ, Trank and Nyambazi, Trank had masterminded a plan to immediately reach the streets. The home-recorded gritty 4-track self-produced, art-designed and distributed classic gained notoriety when selling out of the liquor store called Bottled Liquors in Roxbury's Dudley Station. The project was a huge success with about 300 tapes circulating the streets of Boston. With local airplay and notable shows, the Exile Society had established themselves as one of Boston's most renowned underground hip-hop groups. Along with these accomplishments came another life-changing event. The first of the crew to have a child, Trank's daughter, was born in January of 1994. The Exile Society celebrated and were well on their way. Then 4 months later it all came to a grinding halt. Nyambazi called it a sudden dark violent storm. In April of 1994, Trank, while working his day job on the Boston Harbor Tunnel, received a phone call. His daughter had become suddenly and severely ill. She went from the clinic, hospital to children's ICU in what appeared to be a coma-like state. Worse still, all the doctors and specialists who were called in, no one could diagnose what was wrong with her. They feared they would lose her. It seemed such a random run-in. A residential intern spotting a worried father wandering the halls ended up making a brilliant suggestion. Infant botulism, a toxin from Clostridium botulinum bacteria, which can live in soil, dust, carpets and floors and also can contaminate honey. Good news, there is the absolute highest chance of full recovery. In the waiting room of the Children's Hospital ICU, the four gathered. His daughter's mother asked him, "Can you imagine our beautiful girl in the audience cheering for her dad? Picture that as you rock that stage." That night the Exile Society found themselves honoring a commitment for a show at the Strand Theatre in Upham's Corner in Dorchester, Boston. Trank tied his daughter's blue baby shoe to his black jean rain trench coat. In reference to the dark violent storm, symbolically Nyambazi opened a black umbrella and the Fab Four slid on stage to a screaming crowd. They performed The Buzz, a digital release of the Real Bold Underground, original 4-track recording of The Buzz is now available on Hi-Fi Underground.